Welcome to your first lesson of the Python programming course here at Coding for Finance. Once again, my name is Kalubachi Konde, and I will be your instructor for the rest of this course. Just brace yourself. I hope you're excited because you're going to learn so much. And like I mentioned earlier, in this course, we are going to learn, or you're going to learn, the basic programming concepts in Python. You're going to learn how to write an algorithm, an introduction to object-oriented programming, an intro to data visualization in Python, and hopefully we can get to machine learning as well. In this lesson, today's lesson, we're going to get introduced to programming and algorithms, data types. What is a data type? You're going to learn what input and versus output. You're going to learn about operators, strings, and if statements. And hopefully, if we have time, we can, play the Get to Know Me quiz, or you will code up a Get to Know Me quiz, and we will have a guest speaker as well, John. And I'm excited for that. I'm really looking forward to that. So first and foremost, what is computer programming? So simply put, in the real world, the way human beings communicate, we communicate through languages, spoken languages like English, Spanish, French. And so similarly, if we want to communicate with a computer or machine, we have to speak its language, and we call that a programming language. So we have different programming languages: Python, Java, C, C#, so many different languages, just depending on your use case and what you're trying to develop. And so when we give instructions to a computer, we call that programming. And those instructions are called code. And just like English has its rules about, how to construct a sentence and verbs and nouns, similarly, programming languages also have strict rules about spelling and grammar that the computer is able to read and execute. So we have two types of programming languages. We have high level and low level. So high level is closer to human readable code. It's closer to the human language. Language is English, if I might put it like that. So like your Python and your JavaScript. And your low level is more closer to your machine code, which is binary code. As you can see, the high-level programming languages, class, triangle, all those are human readable. Whereas as we go to the low level, we go close to the machine code, which is binary. And so Python and JavaScript would be your high level, and then assembly would be more of your low level programming languages. I think as just time goes by, there are more and more high level programming languages are being developed, and so there's less need to actually master and learn, low-level programming languages. And then we also have two types. We also have different types of programming languages in terms of compiled languages and interpreted languages. And so, a compiled language has a compiler which translates the whole program into a machine language, and then that stores that results in a file that is executed by the machine. Whereas an interpreted language will translate and execute the program line by line into a machine language that the computer will then execute. So let me give an example of this. So let's say you just bought a fan and you have this manual, and this manual is in Spanish. You don't speak Spanish, you're an English speaker, and this manual is in Spanish. And now you need to assemble this fan, but you don't understand you don't understand Spanish. So a compiled language is basically, you're given a manual with an English version. So you have a Spanish version and you have an English version, where the Spanish manual has already been translated into an English manual, and you can just follow that manual and while you fix your fan. So an interpreted language in this case is, let's say you have a friend who understands Spanish. So this friend will then be reading the Spanish manual and converting line by line, or translating line by line into English. So as he's translating, you're there, fixing your fan and putting the components together. So that's the difference between compiled and interpreted. The compiled language will translate the whole program at once directly into the machine code, whereas an interpreted language will translate it line by line before the computer executes them. So an advantage of a compiled language is it's efficient. You already have your English manual. All you're doing is reading through that. You understand English. Let's go. Let's get this fan working. But the disadvantage is that it uses a lot of computer resources. So an example of a compiled language is a C++, C or C++. So let's say you're trying to develop an operating system. Now, when we talk about resources here, we're talking about CPU and RAM. So something that's going to reside in your local machine or use your local machine would definitely require a lot of resources, like an operating system. So that's the reason why, that's the disadvantage about compiled languages is they use up a lot of resources. And then on the other hand, interpreted languages are good for applications that are not resource intensive. So an example is, let's say you're trying to develop Instagram, for example, Instagram. And you're using a language like Python. So with Instagram, you don't store your images on your actual local, on your phone or your local drive or your local machine. Your images are somewhere in the cloud. So if you're building an app like Instagram, you would use an interpreted language because you don't need to use up, it's not resource intensive. The disadvantage is, your friend translating to the Spanish manual line by line, it's slow. It takes a bit of time. However, that's changing now. So that's the difference between the compiled and interpreted. So Python is a general purpose, high level interpreted language. And so you should be wondering, why Python?
Any questions? This is not a bad time. Okay, it's recording. Cool.
Yeah. Lumba, is the word you're looking for an operating system?
Yes, no. Yes, thank you. Operating system, that's the word. Your English left me, guys. English is on lockdown. It's an operating system. So an operating system, is stored on your local computer. So for something to make that, you would use a language like C++, a compiled language. But if you're using something like, I don't know, Spotify, where your music is on the cloud, or what's this, or Netflix, Instagram, where your images and everything are on the cloud, they would use Python. So here are some of the applications of Python, of the Python programming language. Oh, well, before we get into that, let's speak about why Python. I'm sure some of you are wondering, why are we teaching you Python? Python, like I explained earlier, is a general purpose, high level interpreted language, meaning it's easy to learn and the code is very easy to understand. It's open source. Anyone and everyone can access it. It's available on all platforms, Windows, Mac, Linux. It's pretty efficient. You can do many more lines in Python for less. You can do more in less lines in Python. Also, it supports big data, like I was explaining earlier about how everyone's talking about machine learning and big data and all of these things. So Python has lots of packages and libraries that allow us to do the machine learning. We also have,
sorry.
Yeah.
I actually have a question on that. So what I wanted to ask is why is Python so good for machine learning? And you kind of answered it by talking about the packages and stuff. But is there a reason why there are so many packages for Python for machine learning?
I wouldn't say. I think it's because there's with packages, so there's people they're developers who actually are so very, very smart, and they're able to, like I said, come up with these packages. And these packages basically have all the code you need to know to do something, all the heavy work that goes into machine learning and everything. The coders do that, and they're able to put this in a package, or that's called the package or the module. So I think there's such a huge Python community, and people are constantly updating and creating packages, and so I think that's why there's so many. I think for me, that's why I feel like it has a huge what's the word, in terms of when it comes to big data and machine learning, it's pretty much efficient and the go-to for most people because of the libraries. And you don't have to understand what's going on in the background. It's if you know what the code is doing and what that line means, you'll be good.
Yeah.
You'll be good.
Okay.
So it makes it easy to learn.
Oh,
yeah. Any other questions? Okay, we'll be taking a break in the next I think 6 minutes. So you can just hang on there for a bit. We're going to look at some Python applications. So Python is used for different applications. There's web and software development, like I was explaining. Your Instagram, Spotify, and Uber, you won't believe they actually use Python. It's also used, like I explained, for data analysis and visualization. Game development, although it's not like the main go-to, but if you want something quick, like I explained, and you want to get something out there, you can use Python. Sims 4, and I found out that Sims, Sims, has anyone played Sims? Sims is actually created in Python, which is interesting, which is very interesting. And then you also have your machine learning, which is the chatbots. I don't know if you've heard about chatbots. You can do like pretty cool things, computer vision as well, in Python. So that's really, 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 really dope. So I'm pretty sure so many people have been hearing this word algorithm. Everyone talks about algorithm. What's an algorithm? Does anyone, okay, maybe now you've seen it, but would anyone like to sort of, in different words, maybe explain to us what an algorithm is or what they think an algorithm is? Anybody?
Can I have a guess?
Is Ojo the only one in this class? Guys, no.
Yo, wait. Can I try?
Yeah.
Like, give me a try.
I mean, everyone's always talking about trading algorithms, people who are trading, like you're always using fancy words. Give us a try.
Yeah, so isn't an algorithm just an equation?
Okay.
Or like it's like, yeah, like it's X plus Y gives you Z or whatever.
Okay, not bad. Anyone else?
Yeah, what I know about it is it's basically any distinct pattern that formulates a given thing given a set of data, or it solves a certain problem, like Joshua said, solves a problem using a certain tool, and it does it in a uniform way every single time.
Yes, thank you. So it's basically a set of steps that must be followed to accomplish a task. Literally, you guys encounter algorithms every day. Maybe some of you have algorithms if you have like a routine that you do or something. A recipe. A recipe is an algorithm because you're doing it step by step. Add this. It's like you're trying to make. What am I trying to make? I don't know, pasta or spaghetti bolognese. You'd be like, okay, add this, add that. It's a step by step. You're following it step by step. If you're maybe trying to assemble a toy, you have a manual. You can't just go from, I don't know, like, you have to follow the steps. You can't go from step 1 and skip step 5. It needs to be sequential. It needs to be step by step. So that's what an algorithm is. So even in a computer, when you're trying to solve a problem, you need to be able to understand, how can I break this problem down into different steps? Because the computer will be able to understand, the computer executes those steps, step by step, sequentially from top to bottom. So you need to be able to understand how, if you have a big problem, how can I sort of solve this problem and break it down into something small, a step-by-step algorithm that the computer can understand. And once you have this algorithm, you can run it as many times repeatedly, and it won't always produce the same outcome, but it will be able to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. So that's what an algorithm is. It's just simply a set of steps that must be followed to accomplish a certain task. Oh. So the algorithm itself has some requirements. The steps must be finite. It must have an end. Like, you're not just going to go keep, I don't know, putting sugar, putting flour, and not end up going to maybe putting the cake in the oven and taking it out. Like, you're not going to just keep doing that. You have to have a finite number of steps. And also it must be unambiguous. In terms of the computer, like here it says, the computer doesn't know. You can't just say divide by 2 or -2, and the computer must just decide which one it wants to choose. You always need to specify what choice must be made. So like I was explaining with the if statements, so you'd say, I don't know, if x is less than y, divide by 2, and if x is not less than y, divide by -2. So you must always give the specified choices to be made. It must be effective. It must get the, oh my, sorry, I was meant to, it basically says it must get the job done. This shouldn't be here, but it must be able to get the job done. Otherwise, what's the use of doing it, of coming up with it? It must be able to terminate. It mustn't keep going infinitely. It must have an end goal. And so when it comes to programming, we have something called the input and the output concept. And so the input is the code that we write to the computer, and the output is what it gives us. So when I was typing in that print, so when I was typing in the print hello world, that was me giving the computer the instructions, and then when it printed out the hello world string, that was the result. So when it comes to program, so first space name, if I run that, I'm gonna get an error. So with the identifier, like I explained, you're getting an error because, like I explained, you can't have a space. Another thing, you can't have a number. Your identifier can't have start with a number. So 1 first should give you an error as well. If I run that, error. So what is valid, though? What's the valid identifier is, I don't know, the profits. So you can only have underscores. So instead of having a space, you can replace the space with an underscore. That's a valid identifier in Python, and that should be able to work. Or you can have underscore first and the profits. That works. And another thing is Python is case sensitive. So the is different to the is different to the is different to, all these are different. All these mean different things in Python. So if you create a variable and you've used and you want to call it again, you have to use the same lowercase. It's very case sensitive. So it can't tell the difference between, I don't know, small letters and lowercase. Like, you have to be very specific. So sometimes when you're creating your variables and you encounter errors, maybe you might realize that you maybe added a capital letter to your variable, and so that now you're getting an error and all of that. So just be careful. Python is case sensitive. So we're gonna go into another big part in Python. So we're going into these are now the actual like ABC. I've been saying this, but this is now the actual like ABC. This is the alphabet and the sentences, the verbs, the nouns in Python. So we call them data types, and this is basically how you represent different characters, your numbers, your sentences, your letters, all of that is called data types. So in Python, we have like 4 major ones. We have, this is going to be part of your quiz as well. I think I remember asking a question on this. So you have something called numbers. And with your numbers, it's basically just like your normal, in mathematics, you have integers. Your integers are like your whole numbers. So 5, 8, 0, here's some examples. And in Python, you use this is how you would represent sort of like this is the symbol for the integer. And then you also have something called a floating point or a float, which is basically a decimal number, but in Python, they're called floats. We call them floats. So 6.8, 12.5, all those are floats. Another one is a Boolean. Boolean values are true or false, and they start with capital letters. Excuse me, and these are reserved words. Remember I mentioned reserved words? Reserved words are sort of like, they have predefined meaning in Python and you can't use them as identifiers. So your Booleans, like true and false, are reserved words. And you also have something called a string. I think you saw that earlier when I typed in the hello world. That's what you call a string. I have another example here, Corona. So a string could be represented in double quotes or single quotes. Python is okay with either or, and it basically is anything that contains characters. And another one is none. I'm going to show you the different variations in the notebook, and we're going to play around with these data types. But yeah, it's just basically to show that it's almost like saying 0, but the thing is 0 is a number, right? Sometimes you just want to store a value with nothing, and maybe eventually you want to get to assign a value to that variable. So you can just say none. None with a capital N.
Sorry.
Yes?
I got a question. Aren't variables considered as data types as well?
No. So a variable is like a variable is something that stores a value.
Yes.
The actual value, like the numbers, are the data types, but the one that's storing the value is what's called the variable. Does it make sense? So
Okay, cool. Definitely
so
makes
like
sense.
your number, your 1, 2, 3, and your strings would be your data types, but then you would store that in a variable.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Kalumba,
Yeah.
is the none data type similar to null? I think
Yes. Similar to now. Yeah.
Cool.
So yes, in terms of the different by the way, I realized I didn't show you the comment, how to do a comment. So you can just, it's a simple hashtag and say, I don't know, data types, different data types. So if I click run, nothing's going to happen because in Python, comments are not considered code. It's just a comment, basically, like text. So nothing's going to happen if I say different data types. So like I explained earlier, you have different values. So let's say, I don't know, let me call this integer. I can give this value 6, integer 2, I don't know what you call it, number 2. Number is equal to 2 points. Oh, and you know, in the simple, it just similar to mathematics, you can do similar things. You can add integers, you can subtract, you can do different operations, which we'll get into. But I'm just showing you. So that would be a float. The string you saw it above, the hello world or hello. So the boolean, let's call it truth. So the boolean will be true. So you see that true is a reserved word. You can see it's changed color. It's green. It's green in Python. So it's telling you it's a reserved word, and it's capital T, by the way. Fake is equal to false. Oh, no, sorry, no, false. And by the way, even if I did, okay, maybe you can tell me in the chat room. What's this? What is the data type for this value here? The chat room, give me this one here. What data type is this? This value here. I don't know if I can see in the chats. What are we saying the data types? String, great. Yes, it's a string. Just because it has the
Wow.
the 6.0 don't think it's a floating point. It's a string because it has the quotation marks. So it's easy to get confused there. So yeah, and the none, sorry, the none. So the nothing, I'll just call it nothing is equal to none. So it's basically saying that maybe you just want to create nothing for now, and eventually you assign a variable to it. And when I say assign, I'm just talking about basically, yeah, what I'm doing here is called variable assigning. So you're creating a variable called integer, and you're assigning a value 6 to that integer. So I'm going to be using the word assign a lot. So yeah, those are your different data types.
Kalumba,
Yes.
in your example for the float, you use the word number. Is there a difference there?
Where? Sorry. Oh, here. This is actually bad. Bad.
No, the second one.
This is bad thank you for pointing that out. This is bad for an identifier. I shouldn't be using the same name. I should have maybe given it something else, like decimal number or something.
Okay. The second one. So you have integer, then you have number.
Yes.
Then you said that under. Okay. So.
Sorry.
So under number you have integers and floats. So does it make a difference that you called it number as opposed to float, or is that just?
No. It's just so you can give you can name. I just gave it any number. So you can remember identifiers are any name that you can use. So it's up to you. You can actually use your own name. If you actually type in, let's say if you type in float, you see what happens when you type in float. The thing is, I can't use float because float is a reserved word in Python. So it changes. If it changes color, then I can't use it as an identifier. So let's say if I can use, I probably want to.
So does it mean that Python knows the data type that is being allocated to the variable? You don't have to.
You don't have to predefine it. No, that's the good thing about Python. Actually, I was going to mention in other programming languages, you have to actually state saying integer 2, or is it int? You have to state like int 4 is equal what int name, then give it the name number. Is equal to 3. So luckily in Python knows you don't have to sort of state that it's an int and this you're calling it number. You can just do it instantly. So that's the good thing about Python.
Cool.
Able to tell this.
Sorry, I have a question. Rather just to verify you have number is equal to 2.0, which is stored as a float. Decimal though is stored as a string. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything that has the double quotes or single quotes is a string. Loving the questions, guys. Just keep engaged. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Then we're going to get into some. So we have, remember I explained inputs and outputs, and we've been working with prints throughout. So print is basically just used to display output. And it's known as a function. In Python, a function is just basically a name. You would see once we start to create functions, but it's basically a name block of statements that needs to be executed multiple times. The thing is, sometimes maybe you want to do like you're adding so many different numbers, and instead of you always clicking run and trying to running every. Remember how I explained that Python executes from top to bottom. So instead of you clicking run for every line, and maybe you have like 12 lines of code and you have to click run for every line and every line, the good thing about Python is that you can put all of that code into something called a function, and all you have to do is call that function and then you run that, and that the Python knows, Python already knows the code to run because you've called the function. So it's basically like it summarizes the block of code. That's what a function is, and a function takes in an argument. So the example where we had hello world with something called an argument. And an argument can be any data type. It could be a string, it could be a float, it could be anything. So we have a function, and the function takes in an argument. And that argument, so basically is saying, display this, print hello world is saying, display this string onto the screen. So like I said, hello world is the argument and the value that's sent to the function. So we have, but I've already done this. So we have an exercise here. Can anyone, or maybe we've done the first one, we can do the second one, to write out a program that prints out the sum of any two numbers. So just, I don't know, print and you're adding any two numbers. And then you can also, I don't know if you'll be able to write this out just to see what the output is like, and just to see how different, how you can use the print statement in different ways. So I'm going to do that now in Jupyter.
Sorry, I have a question for the question. Do you want the program to take in user input, or do you want
not
it
yet.
to be?
No, not yet. We're not there yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's the normal value. Give it any values.
Okay.
And then just copy this in 3. Copy this and run it and see what outcome you get. So you can see how the print function works. I hope it's still, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how I can. I'll just copy it myself and you can see it. So any print that adds two numbers. It's simply print, and you put in whatever values it is. 6 plus 8. Now an interesting one. Run. What about, let's say if we put in an integer, can we add an integer and the floats together? Let's try that. 6 and 8.0. So what happens when you add an integer and the float? Python gives you the answer in terms of a float. So it converts the integer to a float. Can we add 2 strings though? Okay, let's see if we can print the addition of 2 strings. Hello plus world. So you can. To add 2 strings using the print function, you can add numbers, you can add floats. That's what the print function does. And so it gives you output. If you want to maybe have a space in between the hello and the world, you simply just add the space. So hello plus the space plus world. And if I run.
Sorry.
Yes?
Sorry. For adding different data types, don't you have like a hierarchy for there's a bit size for every associated with every data type, and you can assign one smaller bit size data type to a bigger bit size data type, is not? Just
so like
sure.
That's what we're going to get into that as well. Yes, we're going to explain basically. I have to go to, yeah. Okay, I'm going to explain that after the second one here. So you can see there's different variations for print. You can add some spice to the print function. So if I run this, what's happening here? There we go. There's a space. What's going on? X, Y. There we go. So be careful with also like copy pasting code. Sometimes, I don't know, it messes up the characters or values. So you can see how you can sort of make use with the print statement. So let's say I'm going to take out the word at the bottom here. So, and then I'm commenting this out. So if I ran this line, it's basically saying print all these different, let me run. So you see it's saying print all these numbers. If you separate them by commas, according to Python, it's leave a space in between, and you can sort of end it with the exclamation mark. You can literally use any symbol. It can be a star, it can be whatever you want it to be, but as long as it's in quotation marks. Or you can say separate each value also with the star. So what happens, it goes to the print statement. If you follow this step by step, it's saying, okay, the numbers are X, which is 5. Sorry, the numbers are. So every time everywhere there's a comma, Python is separating those values with the star. So the first value in the print statement is the numbers are. Then it has a star separating that value. Then it goes to X. X is what? 5. So 5. And then there's a comma here. What does Python do? It's separating with a star. So star. Then it goes to what? Y is 6. 6. What's the next value? It's a comma. Okay, Python is saying, let me add a star. And then does the same thing. Z is X plus Y, which is 11. And it ends that statement with the exclamation mark. So are you seeing what's happening here? Are you following what's happening here with the print statements and how Python is executing the code? So that's just a different way to play around with the prints. And now we're going into inputs.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, what does it mean if it says the float object is not callable?
Can you share your screen? Let me stop. Do you mind sharing your screen with us, or can you give us the code in the chat room? What do you think?
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen.
Let me just stop sharing so you can share with us.
Okay, let me just. Okay. So can you see that?
Yeah.
So where did I like?
So you see between, so that's good. So you see, firstly, you need to look when you're reading your errors, right? Can you see there's a green arrow there saying so it's showing you where the problem is. So the problem is where in line 4 where the print statement is, right?
Oh, bit. Okay.
So now we're going into that line. We're like, okay, so what's happening here? Do you see that after the Z,
Yeah.
there's supposed to be a comma there? So it's even showing you to say, can you see that it's adding the comma there in the print statement?
Oh, I see. I see.
So it's showing you. So even when you experience your errors, always look at what the error is telling you, and it will always show you where the error is. The pointing arrow always show you where the line is, so you can know where the problem is. So once you see that green arrow there, it's showing you that the error is in the print line, and after the if you look. So now you would compare that line to your code, and in the code it has the comma there after the Z, and you didn't have it. So it's just saying, there's the number there. Something, I think, because of the comma wasn't there, it didn't recognize the number.
Okay, so I just put the thing in now. So can I still run the same one, or I can't? I have to do another line.
No, run it again now.
It's still saying the same thing. That's the beef. That's the beef.
Try, and sometimes also just try erasing the Z, taking out the Z there. Did you copy paste, or was it just like?
Nah, I typed these out. So it's a little bit beefy, but.
And the Z there, try to read that Z, where Z is equal to X plus Y. Try to redo that one.
Just like, again.
Yeah, sometimes I'm trying to think of what the error could possibly be.
Yeah, it doesn't feel me.
Hold on.
It's not feeling.
Maybe take away the spaces or something. That's very strange. Because I see what the problem is. Go back. Sorry.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a space between your print and the brackets.
Oh, but how come the sort of green line? The one that shows there.
Sorry.
Okay, so let me just try it again. It's okay. I'll figure this out.
Try again.
I'm gonna highlight this again and then.
Yeah. Or try copy that and paste in a different cell and run it.
Okay. That's not copying. Okay. Let's see if that's gonna be runnable. It still gives me the same thing.
Did you at some point name any variables on top there, like X or Y or something? No?
No.
So I'm not sure. We'll have to.
It's probably just something like, yeah.
That's the thing with code, guys. Like it could be sometimes it could be like you saw a comma there that could stop you from running your code. So it's a matter of trial and error, debugging, trying to see maybe you forgot a comma, because Python is when it comes to the syntax, which is adding commas and all of that, text, whether that's I just try to check everything. Am I using the same lowercase letters and all of that? So we can go into inputs. Let me just share my screen. So this is the exciting part. I think for me, this is the exciting part about programming, is when you're able to get user input. Present. So basically, user input is just gathering data from the user, and the user could be anyone. It could be anyone that you want to I don't know, access. So actually, I'm thinking of where people use user input. Usually, and we experience user input in almost everything and in everywhere. When you're asked to sort of asked to enter a value or enter your details, maybe when you're trying to sign up for something, they always ask you to maybe enter your details, your email address, your name, your cell phone number. All of that is called user input because you're gathering data from the user. And then that input, that data could be stored in a variable. And then you could use that to maybe print or do different things. So we're gonna do an example now using user input. And the first question is, say, write a program to print out the sum of two numbers entered by the user. So if we break this problem down, what is it asking us to do? It's asking us to say, firstly, the first step we want to do is we want to ask a user to enter two numbers, right? So we ask the user to enter the first number which we can call X, second number which we can call Y, and eventually you want to print out those numbers. So as you read the statement, always think of, okay, how can I solve this problem? How can I break it down into smaller problems? So the first problem is to ask the user to enter the numbers. So we're going to do that now in Python. So we use a function called input, and then input would take a prompt. So a prompt would be, let's start with a simple one. What is your name? So if you click, what is your name, and you run Kaluba, that's it, enter, done. So it'll give you, Kaluba. So now what you want to do is, whenever, let's say, Google or Facebook, when you're signing up for your Facebook or your Google, whatever you're signing up for, they need to store your details somewhere. And that's why we can store this input in a variable. So maybe we can say, okay, name is equal to input. What is your name? And then when we run that, so what is your name? Kaluba. Done. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to press enter. So once you press enter, nothing happens because it stored that name in a variable called Kaluba. And you should notice that every time you enter input, Python stores it as a string. So sometimes maybe you want to work with numbers, you'd have to sort of convert that into a number, which we'll do later on. But so let's say if I wanted to print name, I would say Kaluba. So once I print name, it's Kaluba. So now I want you to try this and say, okay, now we want a user to enter two numbers. So you give them the option to enter the first number, which you can call X or whatever, second number, which is Y, and then you must print the sum of those two numbers. Do you mind like just trying that in your Python consoles? So you want the user to enter two numbers, and then you add those two numbers, print out the sum of those two numbers entered by the user.
Sorry, just what was the instruction again? So we're getting two numbers from the user, and then we add them, and then
print out
the sum of them.
Let me add the question here. Print out the sum. Print out the sum of two numbers entered by the user. If you've got it, you can say yes, and then we can evaluate your code.
I wanted to ask, if, you know, like when you're writing your code where it says in and then there's like a line number, where it'll have like in, for example, in.
Yes, 26, yes.
What is it? Like if there's a little star, like mine has a star next to in it.
Oh, it means I think it's running. It's like it's running the code, or the code hasn't been, it's still running.
Okay.
It hasn't completed running yet.
Thank you.
Has anyone been able to do the printing? Give us a yes in the chat room so we can see how you did it, or show us your code. If you've been able to do it in the chat room. Anyone? Now I'm just going to randomly pick.
Nah, fam, I'm still doing it. I'm still writing the code.
So again, you want a user to enter two numbers and you want to print out the sum of those two numbers that the user has entered. And this is how you would ask for inputs. And actually, let me not say numbers, because numbers you have to convert. Strings, it could be strings, it could be strings. Anyone got it? So I'm going to do it. I'm going to start doing it now.
Hi, Kalumba. I think I have an issue.
Yes.
Can I just share my screen quickly?
Yes, please.
I don't know which screen can you guys see? I've got 3.
Are you sharing it now?
Okay, there we go.
Oh.
That's what I wanted. Sure.
Okay, it's loading now.
Yes, we can see your notebook.
Okay, good. So this is what I did, right? I used variables for all of them, but when I out, it doesn't add it just puts them next.
Sorry?
So I used variables for each, and then when I add it, it doesn't add the numbers, it prints next to each other.
Yes, I'm going to explain why now.
Okay.
This is a very important thing that I actually want to address. But that's good. The code is right. There's just one little tweak that you need to make to that. But that's how you would do it. Like, I like that. The first number, enter your first number, enter your so. And also when you're asking for user input, you also need to be very descriptive. So like you said, enter the first number, enter the second number, and then you create a variable called sum that's adding the two numbers, and then you print sum. That's really good. So the only issue here is that remember I explained when you ask for user input, Python stores as a string. So that's why it thinks your number 10 and 20 are strings, and so it's combining the strings. And remember with print, you can actually combine strings. So now I'm going to show you now how to convert that input into a number so that you can actually add the two and you can get an answer in an integer form or float form. So let me just share my screen now. So then first number, I'm just going to call it first number. I'll call it first. First is equal to first number. Second, 10, 20. Okay. So if you want also to sort of see what your numbers are, you can also just, if you say first and then you run, Python will also give you what that value is. So that's a different way to sort of check maybe what variable has been stored, what value has been stored in that variable. So now you can see that it has quotation marks, right? Meaning that it's a string. So what we need to do is we need to convert this string into an integer. And how you would, an integer or a float. And in Python, how you would do that is using the word, so you say first is equal to eval. You can use eval or you can use, so eval is basically saying, okay, let me call it first int. So eval is saying we're gonna take, so remember our first value is a string, we want to convert it to a number. So we say eval first, and we run. So once we run, so we can call this first int again, and if we run it, we will see that now it's a number. So this is how you would convert your user input to a number. So I'll do the same second int with the second input that I got. Second int is equal to eval second. And then now I can add first int, and call this sum. Sum1. Also, yes, so you see, if I call this sum is also a reserved word. So I don't know, I can say add first int plus second int, and then print add. So once I run that, so you see the error, what happens is, the problem is it's a name error. So the problem is in the first line, and what is it? I used a small letter I, and here I'm using a big uppercase I, and Python is telling me that this is not defined, meaning I need to change it to small. And then we get 30. So now you don't have to do all of these things in separate lines. With Python, there's so many ways, with programming, there's so many ways to do one thing. So if you want, you can even just say eval input already before you even go do the conversion. You can do it.
Sorry, Kaluba.
Yeah?
What does eval do again?
It's converting a string into a number.
Okay, but I mean, it seems like you could do that with int or with float.
You can use ints, you can use floats, you can use eval. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. Yeah.
So what is eval doing that's like different?
The thing is with int, you are saying it must. Eval is saying it can be a number. It can be it's maybe it's a float, maybe it's an integer. But if you use int, you're saying make this an integer, or if you use float, you're saying make this strictly a float. Whereas with eval, like, okay, it's a number, so it may the user can either enter a float or an integer, but we just want a number. Whereas with int, you're being strict and you're saying this is going to be an integer and this must be using float, saying this must be a float. So
okay, so eval is kind of looking at like the value that's been put there, and it's like evaluating if it's what it is.
Evaluate.
Okay, and then so say now, because I had put mine as an int. So say now someone comes and they type and they input as like the first number 10.3. So what would happen there? Would it just drop the
try the best way to know is to try it. So you try it. The best way with coding, if you have a question, say what if the best way to know it is to actually try it. So let's try that. First in, so you said so what did you do? You said you converted this to, but
I put int.
Okay, so this
sort of how you're demonstrating now with the eval. I put
so
int
what's your first number?
Around the input, whatever.
Okay, so what's your first number? User says 10.5.
Yeah.
Number user says 2.6. Now you're saying, okay, int here, right? So you see, I think I was Muzi, you mentioned this, right? Is Muzi with us? Anyway, he mentioned.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you remember you mentioned the thing about how sometimes you can convert a float to an integer, but you can't wait. Let me say, you can convert an integer to a float, but you can't convert a float to an integer.
Because a float is a bigger, it has a bigger bit size on like.
In terms of the way it's stored for storage in Python. I'm going to see if I can get a chart of the different bit sizes. So that's how you can convert. So I can say, I can convert an integer to a float, but I can't convert a float to an integer. because of the storage space that's assigned to the different data types in Python.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that was a good one. Thank you for pointing that out, Ojo.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my question. Sorry for hijacking
No.
the
That's
session.
a really good question. Important. These are small like issues that people will face, and like these are the basics that people really need to start grasping. So thank you for that question. Have we? So yeah, we're good with that question. We getting user input. I think there's another exercise. Oh, it says write a program. Let me copy paste. Just another one working with input. Oh no. Just another, just to see if we've mastered the. So this is the markdown. So it says write a program that asks the user to enter their name and age and print out a message that greets the user by their name. So now we're mixing up strings here, and age is actually I should add name and age. So prints user by their name and tells them how old they are. Let me redo that. And tells them, gives them their age, gives them their age. If you're encountering any errors or problems or issues, feel free to ask. So I'm sure the first one is fine, the name one, enter your name.
Sorry, Kaluba, I sent you a message in the private chat.
I'm trying to access, where's the private chat? Oh, there we go. Yes, after this, we're going to go into the guest lecture. After this question, this is done. So I'm going to just give you the solution, and then we can take how many breaks? How many? 10-minute break, and then get into the guest lecture quickly.
Maybe 5 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes, then we can go to get into the guest lecture. But let me just enter the answer now. How old are you? So sometimes in Python, you can do like, instead of you doing it step by step by saying, okay, let me get the number, then let me convert it, then you can just do everything in a single line. And then you'd say print, hello, name, you are, age, years old. I'm sure you had different variations. Maybe some of you use the plus signs to combine the strings, but this is how you would do it. Is everyone okay with the answer? Does anyone maybe not understand what's going on? The one thing that you had to do was sort of maybe just convert this to the number, but otherwise everything is all good. So yes, guys, that's
How are you?
Sorry? Do you have a question? So well done, guys. That was your first programming lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't get to cover everything that I wanted to cover. Like there was so much